Welcome back to The Forge. For those of you who are new, welcome to The Forge. I'm Vulkan, and today we are going to be talking about resurrection. What kind of resurrection? Well, I gotta say, an MMO resurrection. And that MMO is Hellgate London. So Hellgate London is an action RPG. It takes the core design of your typical roguelike games, uses randomly generated maps, monsters, loot, and really taking that and capitalizing on it to maximize your replayability. So, what is Hellgate London? Let's take a little jaunt through its history, okay? Let's look at a little jaunt through its history and let's figure out what this game was and why it got shut down and why I'm even talking about it. So the game was originally developed by Bill Roper's Flagship Studios. Flagship Studios was comprised pretty much of Diablo 1 and 2 developers. So big hitters, right? These are big guys back in the day. Hellgate was released in 2007. So, and here's the thing, I remember seeing this game at Walmart, GameStop. Eventually I picked it up. The box art was so good. It was so really cool, just crisp. I gave it a shot. So I really enjoyed it. It was a fun MMO dungeon crawler, had sort of a Diablo-esque loot style system. And like I mentioned above, randomly generated content, and that really kind of helped push the game along. So it was a fun game for me to play. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, the art style at the time, right? It doesn't look that great now, but the art style at the time was really cool and kind of dark dystopian. So, and the story was forgettable. The story wasn't really that great. It had a 5-act kind of thing similar to Diablo. But to me, I didn't really attach to it that well. But I really like the setting, like I said, dystopian London. Post a Hellgate opening, which is the name, obviously, but, pretty badass. You had zombies shambling in the streets, you had Hulks walking around looking to drop loot for somebody. There was named zone bosses that would roam around, you'd find them, then you could farm them for a while for a chance at rare gear. It was really cool. I really liked the setup of that game. So let's talk bones, right? Let's talk foundation of the game. What did it offer? Why was this a good game? Originally, it was subscription-based. This also carried over as an option for its free-to-play transformation, which we'll get to shortly. But in the game, you could choose between 3 factions, right? Each faction contained 2 classes, so a total of 6 classes overall. You had the Templars, the Kabbalists, and the Hunters. Those are the 3 factions. Templars were home to the Guardians, just sort of like a paladin, and Blade Masters, which were a one-handed blade and a ranged weapon user. So essentially you had melee and ranged, kind of like a sword and a pistol type of setup. Kabbalists hosted the Summoners and the Evokers, which is pretty straightforward there, and the Hunters offered the Marksmen and the Engineers. So melee classes in the game were set to third person. You had to be kind of your typical MMO omnipresence, right, where you're behind the individual, swinging your blade, shooting your gun. However, other classes like the Marksman, they could opt into like a first-person perspective. They could use things like sniper rifles. So, you'd click to zoom, and you'd actually go into the scope, just like a typical first-person shooter, which was pretty cool in the game at the time. So the game did offer multiple difficulties as well, similar to Diablo, right? This was strange, though, for an MMO at the time. You could take on demons and zombies in either normal or elite mode. However, if you played through the story, then you got an option to do nightmare difficulty, where things obviously were pretty difficult, and that level cap was 62, regular level cap was 50, so pretty great. But when it comes to loot, right, this game was basically Borderlands, right? This is a really, really interesting kind of take on it. When you think of your typical MMO, they have a set number of like weapons, things like that. Typically, they're all handcrafted, and except for like the uncommons, but who wields uncommons at in-game? This is more Borderlands-esque or Diablo-esque. They had hundreds of base weapons and different armor types, each one randomly rolled with magical affixes, aka special properties, things like plus 10 bleed damage, for example. So, with a game that kind of sounds this great, right? It offers dungeons, raids, outdoor content, this, that, group content, single player, multiple difficulties. It sounds like just a home run, yeah? Why isn't it around today? Why did it fail? Well, here's the deal. After Flagship Studios closed down due to a lack of funds, some of the developers spoke out about what happened behind closed doors. One of them being Stephan Goldstein, a former Flagship business developer. He chalked the entire thing up to a handful of things. 1. The studio was built on a plan A mentality. 0 failure, no plan B. This obviously was bad, right? They didn't have any sort of backup plan or cushion for themselves. It was either we're going all in and we're going to fail, we're going to burn out, die trying, or that's it. Like it is at 100% or 0%. So there it is. Goldstein went on to say they should have raised some more money when they had the chance to help keep the studio afloat, and they could have. Flagship actually consisted of, like I said, of former Diablo devs, and they had pushed over 17 million units and carried a ton of merit. They were like gods in this industry, and they did not capitalize on that to raise enough money. He was quoted as saying they could have raised an additional 25 million that would have helped them essentially push forward and keep the game alive, keep the game going, but they chose not to for some reason. So another thing was billing issues. Billing during Hellgate was a complete mess. People were getting double billed, some folks getting the game for free depending on where you got it. Goldstein mentions that if they had really waited until the last minute to set up billing, which obviously led to issues. I remember a couple of my friends, they got double billed, and they pretty much killed the mood for them. They were like, okay, well, I'm just going to return it, and I'm not going to, if they can't get billing right, then how's the game going to be good? And I mean, these are MMO fans, right? I mean, me and these guys play like World of Warcraft all the time. So if they didn't like it and they wouldn't put up with that, I highly doubt anyone else would. So that obviously was a big issue. And then lastly, right, their multiple business models were a huge problem. So buying a box copy got you the single player experience for free, while a subscription got you the online play for $15 a month. Most people opted for the free model, obviously, and kept on with their lives. I mean, they sold 500,000 plus copies of this game, but only a fraction of those actually paid subs, so you naturally ran out of money. Goldstein stated that they should have simply just pissed off the community up front and said, you know what, it's a sub-based game, deal with it, and they would have most likely been fine. Sure, they would have sold probably half the amount of copies, but half those would have been plus $15 a month continuously, and that would have funded the game to keep moving the studio and the game forward. So why does this matter? Why am I even talking about a dead game? Why am I talking about a review of a dead game? What's the deal? Well, so it just so happens that Hellgate is actually coming back to Steam. It was greenlit the other day, folks. Full release as a single player game, which is great because the game was insanely fun, even without your homies watching your six, just running around by yourself. So Hanabitsoft, right? Hanabitsoft Studios, developers, publishers, however you want to refer to them, I just know them as Hanabitsoft. They were the ones that acquired the rights from Bill Roper back in 2008 and are relaunching the game. So they tried to bring it back fully as an MMO in 2011, but the North American servers didn't do so well. So there's a free-to-play. You could go in, do your typical stuff, pay a subscription, and get access to multiple things. So it was it's really one of those things where if you played free-to-play, you might as well not even play. Like, you couldn't talk outside of whispers. You couldn't join a guild. You couldn't do any content past, I think it was 30. So it was heavily reduced. So you might as well just pay a subscription model. Well, obviously, didn't do too well on North American servers, so they shut the game down. It's still up in Korea, though. So there's that. So now they're looking to offer it as a free-to-play game on Steam, but like I said, it's single player only. So don't expect to launch with your buddies and do some co-op. But from a single player perspective, still pretty good. So the relaunch is going to have all the Hellgate content up to Hellgate Tokyo and provides an optimized single player content and premium support items. Not entirely sure what premium support items are, if that's just cash up stuff, or is it, quote, we shut down the cash shop, but here's access to what we used to have stuff. I'm not entirely sure. I never played the Tokyo expansions, that's new to me. Not really sure how that's going to play out. But either way, I'll be doing a full review of this game when it launches November 15th. So let's get this discussion rolling, guys. Hit me with a comment below. Let's chat Hellgate. This has been Vulkan, and I am out.